Sonic series has had sort of a weird life because it was a Sega property, and the Sonic games were always Sega games. When Sega pulled out of hardware, there was a question as to what was going to happen. What we saw were Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 get ported over to the GameCube with some new content. And that was sort of a good solution, but the temporary solution was a game called Sonic Heroes, which was kind of a Sonic game, but they mixed in a couple things. It was basically you're controlling a team of 3 characters.
All of the characters that had previously been introduced, like Amy, Cream, Knuckles, Shadow the Hedgehog, and it introduced kind of a team play mechanic. So you'd be going through this level like in a Sonic Adventure game, but you'd have a team of characters, each with their own special ability, and you'd have to utilize that special ability to get through certain areas in the level.
Hey guys, spread out! Level up!
Sonic Heroes, I think, still struck a chord with people because in a lot of ways it's sort of like riding on people's affection for that character. And, you know, the fact that he's been around for this long kind of speaks to the fact that there's something about him that still speaks to people regardless of generation, which is quite a feat because you don't see that anymore.
There have also been a couple spin-offs. Shadow the Hedgehog actually got his own game that Sonic was in, but he wasn't even a main character.
I think a lot of people wanted it to be a Sonic game because it looked like it had all the earmarks, but it was a very different animal.
This game had a lot darker tone than past Sonic games. It was still a 3D adventure game where you're running around real fast, but this one had guns and you're actually fighting people, so that was kind of a controversial thing, and it was the first in a Sonic series.
Shadow is his own character, and, you know, to their credit, Sega made a game that was tailored to that character.
And it actually did have quite a few of the Sonic favorites in it, but the gameplay just wasn't that good, and it just kind of had its flaws.
It had Sonic elements, but ultimately there was some gunplay involved. There was, you know, picking up objects, a lot of stuff that Sonic doesn't do in his game. So it didn't quite work out. Like if you were a Sonic fan looking for a fix, that wasn't quite the one for you.
Recently, just last year, Sonic kind of returned to its roots on this Nintendo DS with Sonic Rush, which took the gameplay and made it even simpler by making it basically just running really fast through the levels. The platforming and the enemy fighting, the boss fights were reduced to a minimum, so you'd just run through level after level, and it went over both screens so you could run down these long stretches, up through loops, corkscrews, all kinds of crazy stuff. And the level design was actually pretty cool, and it was a pretty fun game just because it reminded you of the original Sonic.
It totally could have been a game that came out back during the Genesis era in terms of feel, because it's got that incredible sense of speed. But at the same time, you've got sort of like a next-gen sheen to it, because Sonic's been redone in this really cool, funky, cel-shaded style, and it's got really, really good music that maybe isn't quite in line with the Sonic stuff back then, but it's very contemporary, and it has the same feel to it, which is great.
Let's do it!
What you end up having is this really amazing 2D game at its core that's got some 3D elements, because all the boss fights are 3D battles that happen sort of in, like, you know, different on planes that sort of take advantage of the 3D space. ultimately, you've had, in a lot of ways, the game I think that everybody had been hoping to get quite a few years ago, before 3D technology could do what it does now. And, 2D had kind of maxed out. And you end up having this really great hybrid game that is just a lot of fun.
The most recent Sonic game is Sonic Riders, which is kind of a racing game with all your favorite Sonic characters where they're on boards just flying down hills at super speed.
You've got Sonic, you've got the core people, but you've also got a whole bunch of other characters which happen to be birds, because birds like to airboard.
Oh, not bad.
It's pretty simple, there's not a lot to it,
And there's a whole trick system involved. It's kind of a racing game.
but it's got the speed that Sonic fans crave.
See ya.
It's aimed at like people that are either hardcore Sonic fans that'll play anything with him in it, or kids that are just in for a good time and just, want to do something silly.
Oh, new competition.
Original Sonic games are very much events, just like original Mario games, which, you can't really say that about too many games these days. But the Sonic games are events. When they come out, you know that they're going to be special. Unfortunately, special takes time. So Sega has opted to not do a Sonic game for the remainder of this generation, and are focusing their efforts on a new Sonic game that's going to come out for next-gen platforms. Now that he's turning 15, there's always thoughts as to what's going to happen with Sonic in the future. As we mentioned, there is definitely a next-gen title in the works. We've seen some of it at the Tokyo Game Show, and it looks amazing. People are definitely taking advantage of the next-gen hardware to do something bigger in scale. The one thing about Sonic has always been speed and scale. And, it seems like he's going to be a good fit for the next-gen platforms. We'll be curious to see what he looks like in the final game, but definitely he's a character that's been able to evolve with the times. So, what happens for him in the future is pretty much, sky's the limit.
We hope you've enjoyed our look at the history of Sonic the Hedgehog. For more on the Sonic games, or any other video game for that matter, visit us online at www.gamespot.com. I'm Rich Gallup, and we'll see you soon.